Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's basketball betting podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marino, joined once again by Action Network writer Jim Turvey. Jim, it is the last week of the regular season. It's also going to be the last pod for you and I for a bit. We're both gallivanting off to Europe next week, but have no fear. There will be a Buckets pod next week. Our buddy Matt Moore, you probably know him if you listen to this feed for the NBA versions of Buckets. He's going to do a little playoff preview for us next Tuesday. But in the meantime, it's you and I, Jim.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting trying to follow all this while on various vacations and luxurious. No, it's. I think it should be a fun trip, and I definitely am excited to get a break from the day-to-day grind of some of the betting stuff and just kind of zoom out and watch the W. It's so rare to watch it without like a bet involved, so I think it'll be fun to kind of rewatch the league in a different light. So I don't know about yourself, but I plan on at least following the playoffs. It's hard to ignore playoffs when they're going on.
Exactly. I mean, I certainly won't be ignoring. And I'm only going to be gone for a week, so I'll be back before the end of the first round. So I'll probably be back the following Tuesday for this podcast. But let's get into the 4-game slate tonight, because there is a lot of a lot at stake at the moment. A bunch of teams are still trying to vie for playoff spots, if not actual playoff spots, then seeding. And there's quite a bit of madness, but I think it actually makes for a very interesting slate to bet. So we got 4 games, like I said, and let's start with the Sparks at Connecticut, 7 Eastern on Twitter. At last check, Sun are 6.5-point favorites. And so let me set the stage. Sparks just beat the shorthanded Mystics without Nneka Ogwumike. She is questionable for tonight. The Sparks are in 8th right now. So, again, they need this. They're one of the teams that need to win as many games as humanly possible. So the Sun, on the other hand, they clinched 3rd, but it was like kind of a letdown because they lost to the Liberty. They were on the back end of a back-to-back, so I kind of saw that coming. And we talked about this last week. Like, are the Sun really going to give any less effort just because they are locked into a playoff spot? My gut is saying no, that, they want to bounce back. They want to win today. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that the Sparks need this way more.
Yeah, I think if you are a motivational bettor, there are definitely a couple games today that are gonna catch your eye for sure. I think the most interesting thing to watch for in this game is gonna be Alyssa Thomas's minutes, because, like you said, they are locked into that 3 seed. We know we both are very much on the same page. If she's out on the floor, there's not going to be anything less than 100%. For her, it's 120%. Like she is just nonstop go. But I do wonder if edicts come from above of let's get her down to 30 minutes. That's what a normal player plays often. The fact that she plays 40 a game is kind of crazy. So I really want to watch this to kind of look ahead to the final 2 games, because I think that will be very telling. In terms of betting this game in particular, though, so this number opened at 10 and it got bet to 6.5 pretty quick. I think that the books were reading that betting as maybe Nneka is going to play, but I actually think that the number was just off the start. Mm-hmm. I think even without Nneka in the lineup, the Sun shouldn't have been 10-point favorites. I think it's come to around where it should be. If Nneka is officially playing, I actually would still take this 6.5. I'd take it around to about +5. So I'll be curious to see if she is ruled in, if the books keep adjusting, or if they were kind of adjusting, thinking that, bettors had information that she was playing and that was their move right there. So this one's kind of an interesting one to keep an eye on. I think at this moment, it's a pretty fair line. But if she's ruled in and it goes, and if you still see 6.5, I would grab that. If she's ruled out and it moves back to that +10, I would also take that number. I'm definitely leaning towards the Sparks of the 2 teams today. I think the Sun, they're kind of limping towards the finish. We've talked about the second half of the season. They really haven't been the same team. And for the Sparks, Calvin Wetzel, one of our favorites here, we shouted him on the pod a couple times. He had a great tweet the other day, and it kind of speaks to these players that, and we've talked about Laisha Clarendon before, who have bigger impacts than really it seems like can be captured in 1 or 2 point move in the market. The Sparks with Laisha in the lineup are 17-4 against the spread. The Sparks without Laisha in the lineup are 3-13 against the spread. Now, obviously, there's some noise there, but there is something to be said. I think Laisha is so key, just kind of that glue piece that just holds everything together, and they've been essential to the Sparks' success this year. So, that's a person who, if they're out today, that's almost in a way, it seems crazy to say that's a bigger impact than NECA. But you can see in the numbers that, they have had that kind of central role to holding together the offense, the defense, just every little thing. They've been huge. So that's a name. They're on the injury report, so it should be good to go. And I'm leaning Sparks, not strictly because of that, but also because they've been playing better lately. And I think the Sun are, kind of locked in a little bit less motivational spot. So
I'm on the same page with you. I mean, I'll just say sometimes there are players that do things that don't show up on the stat sheet, whether it's an energy, whether it's just pushing the pace, organizing. And I think Laisha is one of those players for sure. Now, I just popped open my phone and Sparks are at +7.5 right now. I think I'm going to grab this right now because even I was leaning Sparks plus the points, even without NECA, just because of how much they need this game. Now, I know it sucks traveling to Connecticut, but I feel like they're going to get up for this game. So I don't know that they're going to win, but I do think, to your point, I thought 6.5 was a fair number. I like 7.5. So I think.
Well, that's a gym that Kurt Miller is plenty familiar with. So if there's any little tricks to the stadium that he needs to share.
And, I don't know that AT's minutes will be limited at all, but I do think it's going to be a conversation. Like within that organization, it has to be a thought of, we need our engine for the playoffs and we can't have her playing 40 minutes every night. We have to weigh that out. So it is a conversation.
Well, I think you and I have both thought that, part of what the Suns slowing down, like kind of feels like they're not quite the same team they were in the first half, is because they are overworked. So honestly, it would be kind of dumb if they didn't tone down their minutes. But again, these are hyper competitive people that you have to actually, consider the long-term ramifications if you start limiting them. So I think you're right to say it's a conversation, and that alone in and of itself can be worth a point or two. So.
All right. Sorry. Pardon me. I'm just placing a bet as we speak. Let's see. Do I need to add money? We'll find out. All right. Next game. Let's talk about the Sky visiting the Fever, 7 Eastern, NBA TV. Sky are favored by 1.5. So Sky coming off a loss to the Liberty. They looked really good in the game until the Liberty pulled away in the fourth quarter. Again, another team that they got something to play for big time. They are 1 game back of the Sparks. They're in 9th place, the Sky. The Fever are not officially eliminated, but they're a few games back. So they're like essentially out of it. But that being said, they have been playing very inspired basketball. They've been competitive. They've been in every game. They just knocked off the Wings in overtime. So, I mean, it's not like they're rolling over by any stretch. But I just feel like with this number, like, I don't know. I lean the Sky. I lean the Sky here, I think, -1.5. What about you?
Yeah, I think you set it up perfectly. You said a lot of what I was going to say. Again, if you're a motivational bettor, this is the team that's chasing the Sparks. They also had a great point a couple broadcasts ago. They were talking about how their semi-new head coach, he joined midseason, Botan Sever. He sat the team down, and they kind of with about 5, 6, 7, 8 games to go in the season, they just looked at the path. They looked at the schedule, and they picked out points. They're like, this is a must-win game. This is a must-win game. They looked at the Sparks schedule. How are they going to fit? And they just kind of laid it out very clearly. And if you are that clear visioned, this is a game that you have circled as an absolute must-win. Yes. Now, What I think is very telling, though, is that the market isn't entirely buying, because
Right.
they opened as a 1.5 point favorite and it hasn't moved at all. So the market is not a believer in the Sky team. And I think it's kind of what you said about this Fever team, who has been quietly pretty solid the second half of the season. Aaliyah Boston, I mean, you really can't say enough about how her impact on the floor this rookie season. She's been absolutely incredible. She's proven herself to be, by some of the, I always mention in passing the fancy pants stats. She is one of the best in the league at the fancy pants stats, and the impact she has on the court is just incredible. So where I'm going to look instead, because I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous with that spread, to be honest. And it's a little bit different twist on the motivation spot. So Kalia Copper, I always look, and I was actually talking about this with Matt Moore and Jude Belair on one of our player prop how-to podcasts last night. If I am looking at a motivation spot, where I like to look is at player props. And I like to look at rebounds, because that's the one where if you're like amped, you might be taking bad shots and missing just as many, your point total may not actually jump up. Assists, if anything, usually you're more focused on yourself. You're less likely to pass maybe, but rebounds is the one where you kind of control. They're so tied to, there's obviously luck and where the ball bounces and whatever, but if you're gung-ho going for it, rebounds are where you're going to see an increase. And if you look at Copper, she has seen a big increase in her rebounds over the last 5 games since they kind of had that playoff overlook of what we need to do to get into the playoffs. So right now you can get plus money on over 4.5. She's cleared that in 4 out of the last 5 games she's played, which in and of itself, I don't think is enough to, say, oh, it's going to be 5 out of 6. But when you add in the fact that, there is this hyper-focused motivation down the stretch, and the Fever are good at, they're one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the league. However, they are not great at allowing rebounds against opposing guards, which makes sense because they kind of have a smaller backcourt. It's really, Aaliyah Boston and Alyssa Smith who are doing the rebounding. So if Copper is able to kind of crash the boards either on the offensive glass or on the defensive end, I really think that this is the better way of, for me at least, playing this motivational angle. So I'm going to be looking at Kalia Copper over 4.5 rebounds.
I love that advice, but I am still kind of tempted by this spread here. So let me get your opinion.
Okay.
It's almost negligible as far as the price for money line or Sky minus 1.5. So I'm looking at, minus 1.5, minus 105 odds, and then on the money line minus 118. It's negligible until it becomes a close game, right? And you're like, I wish I only just picked them to win. But I do think if the Sky are going to win, they're going to win probably by more than 2 points. But again, with this scrappy Fever team, they are at home. The other thing I was thinking is, like, in their last win over Dallas, like I said, it took overtime. And Kelsey Mitchell and Alyssa Smith both had to drop 30. Aaliyah Boston had a good game, but I'm like, I don't know if I see that happening again. So that's why I'm kind of still leaning Sky.
I'm with you in leaning Sky, and I'll say, with that spread versus money line debate, it is a funny one. I had it with a friend earlier this year. He said, if it's ever 1.5, I take the points to get that extra little payout. Of course, that game, the team won by 1. So sadly, they have sniffed out. It's usually, I think it's about 12 cents per point. And if you think about a money line is like the equivalent of winning by 0.5. So it's 13 cents. So maybe it's a tiny bit better to grab that minus 1.5. But
maybe just to be safe, I go money line.
Exactly. They've figured it out. So I think it's a matter of which you would feel less bad if it didn't hit. And I think the money line it takes out that somehow winning by 1 and not winning your bet, which is like the most infuriating thing ever.
And again, because the price is pretty much negligible. This is good. I'm getting my bets in as we speak, because I've been horrible the last 2 weeks of actually betting the things that I want to bet, because I've been getting distracted. So I'm literally doing this now. I'll be logging them in the Action app.
Perfect.
Just put a little half unit on that.
Nice.
And I might not be done yet. We got 2 more games here. All right. So Liberty are favored by 6.5.
Oh, wow. You even popped up another, huh?
It just jumped a touch. Was 5.5 when I made my notes. 8 o'clock Eastern, excuse me, on CBSSN. So this is another one that I'm like, this is interesting. To me, like the Liberty are such a better team that they should definitely beat they should definitely beat the Wings by like 7 or so points. But they're traveling. The Wings, they haven't quite clinched the fourth seed, but most likely that's where they're going to end up. Both of these teams are kind of where we expect them to be. It's not like hyper motivation, I don't think, on either side. I would say maybe the Wings, if anything, have a bit more motivation just because they're coming off an overtime loss, like I said, to the Fever. So they'll probably just have a bad taste in their mouth. And plus, you want to beat the Liberty, right? Every team is going to want to get up and play their best against one of the best teams in the league. So I do like the motivation for the Wings, but I just don't like, it doesn't make sense that the Liberty should lose to the Wings.
Yeah, well, this Liberty team right now is absolutely locked in. So if you and the listeners will take a second to just listen, let's listen to their last, I believe it's their last 10 games here. So they have a 30. It's basically what they've done in the last month: 38-point win over the Aces, 16-point win over the Sky, 11-point road win over the Fever. Then they got the Commissioner's Cup victory. They did drop the next game, but that was a road game to the Aces 2 days later. That's the only loss in this stretch. Then a 22-point road win over the Mercury. Then a road win over the Sun. Then 35-point road win over the Lynx. 9-point win over the Aces. 31-point win over the Sun. 17-point road win over the Sky. These are not even close. They're running teams absolutely out of the gym. We talked in the first half of the season about how they were one of the bottom two teams against the spread. It was the Mercury and the Liberty. And we're like, how does this make sense? The Liberty are second in the standings, but second to last when it comes to against the spread. Well, they flipped that. They're now over 500 against the spread because they've covered 9 of their last 11 because they're just running teams out of the gym right now. So the 6.5 number, it's starting to get into a range that I don't love, but I am on the Liberty. I think 6.5, you could still do a smaller play. I really liked where it was opening at. But this team, they are really locked and loaded. The Wings are a very, very talented team, but they're more enigmatic. So I think that to a degree, if the Wings are there, it's actually going to be a really close game. And so it might be more like 2-3 points. Or the Liberty are just going to run out of the gym, and you might be able to, if it gets up to 7.5, it still has some value there because that's what the Liberty have been doing lately. And the Wings sometimes can disappear because they could, Enrique is one of the best players in the league, but she can be prone to streakiness at times. So I'm leaning to the Liberty just because of what they've been doing the last month. I think this is what we kind of pictured from the team at the start of the season. And so it doesn't seem to me fluky at all. It seems like this is the team. For me, it might be the team to beat right now. And they do have some motivation in that they're still only 1 game back of the Aces in the loss column, and they have that tiebreaker. So if they win out, I don't think that the Aces have a pretty easy schedule, so I don't see them losing one. But you never know. On one night in the WNBA, they lose one. Suddenly, the Liberty get home court for the finals, which is massive. So
that's true, and I know that they want to stay consistent and just keep that level up. They don't want to dip. They just want to keep like plowing ahead. I do wonder about the tiebreaker though, because wouldn't they have technically? Okay, so there were 5 games, including the Commissioner's Cup. But the Commissioner's Cup doesn't count towards standings. So wouldn't it be 2-2 as far as regular season?
It is. You're 100% right. They have a weird tiebreaker that is point differential in those head-to-head games, which the Liberty have because they ran them out of the gym that one time. So it's a very weird tiebreaker, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that, but I guess it does make sense. That's a very good point. So I'm feeling Liberty even more. I liked it better at 5.5, and now it's at 6.5. So we'll see. Also, just a side note, you said the word enigmatic, and I found myself Googling the definition. So for anyone out there listening, enigmatic means difficult to interpret or understand, mysterious. So yes, I definitely think Dallas is more of the enigmatic team between the two. And, as you said, the Liberty, not only have they been winning, they won 6 straight, they've been winning by a decent margin, and they're not the type of team, like you said, that are like fluky where you feel like, oh, maybe they're due for a clunker. Another interesting point too is Sabrina Ionescu is probable. She missed or sat out
It's
the
a very
last
good
two
point. Yep.
games, which were pretty decisive victories. And now she's coming back into the fold. So yeah, I'm not gonna do what I did before and place this bet like right in the moment, but I am leaning Liberty here to cover. All right. One more game. We got the Mystics at the Mercury, 10 Eastern on CBS SN. And I think this is another really interesting one. Mystics are favored by 6.5. Yep, still 6.5. And Shakira Austin out again.
Oh, it's
Ariel Atkins
unbelievable.
out again. Christy Tolliver, poor thing, just came back like recently, hurt her knee now and is now out again, which is just a bummer just because she,
Yeah.
we have not once this season seen the Mystics at full strength. Not
They
once.
literally they had that injury report that was blank. They're like, we've been waiting to do this all season. Then hours later, someone was questionable with an illness. You're just like, there's something in the water there in Washington this season. You just feel so bad for them.
But that being said, I still lean Mystics here. Once again, because of the motivation, they're only a game ahead of the Sparks. So they're currently in seventh in the standings. They need every win. And it just so happens that the Mercury are also a team riddled with injuries and have no motivation because they're eliminated from playoff contention. So you have Shea Petty is out, Diana Taurasi is out, Sophie Cunningham is doubtful. So, and that's why you see the Mystics are favored even despite their own injury issues. And we've said it all year. They're a team that, like, even when they're shorthanded, they compete. They seem to go into every game prepared. Brittany Sykes, I feel like if Alyssa Thomas is the engine for Connecticut, I think Sykes is probably the engine for Washington. She just seems to have endless energy. She's always just diving on the floor, making big defensive plays. Just like you could see, like her heart and soul being left on every court, even when they're losing. And I think the fact that we're not saying Elena Deladon is out is huge. And then Natasha Cloud is another. She seems to be like that calming presence of just like stability for them too. So I feel like it's Mystics here for me. I'm just debating about the number a little bit.
Yeah, this spread kind of scares me a little bit. There's so many unknowns, and in theory, unknowns can sometimes be great. They can help you find an edge if you have more information. But especially at this time of the season, when stuff just gets a little wonky, when you add that in, I'm a little scared of the spread, to be honest. So I think I'm going to go to a derivative market again and kind of find a different way to play this. I'm looking at the Mystics team total. I'm leaning towards the over here. Again, this is not like a hammer play. This is more a lean because I think it's a fun game to talk about. So I want to have people something to come out of this game. So the thought here is basically the Shakira effect. I've talked about this when she's in and when she's out. So she's one of those players, kind of like Laysha Clarendon, who seem to have maybe a little bit bigger impact on either a spread or a total than the books can fully pin down. So when she plays, she is one of the best defenders in the league, despite being in her second season. She's absolutely integral to their defense. But also she kind of slows down their pace. I don't think she hurts their offense, but she does slow down their pace. So if she is out, that means a faster pace and not as good defense. The latter of that doesn't matter as much for this bet, but it does mean they will play at a faster pace with Shakira off the court. You mentioned Brittany Sykes. I think that's another way to look to play this. These injuries have been incredibly disappointing and just really a bummer, but it has led to, I think people have a newly found appreciation of Brittany Sykes. And like you said, she is that person for the Mystics and the one who kind of really is drive stuff and has had an outstanding season. I'll be curious to see, end of season awards, if she's able to get on, a first, second, or third team all W would be great to see, because she's been outstanding in the league for a while. She does it on both ends. So this spread kind of scares me. The total kind of scares me. I'm a little bit worried that Brittany Griner could, get ruled out last night, because what motivation did the Mercury really have to to put Brittany on the court. So, maybe that means I should lean towards the Mystics, but there's just so many moving parts. I'm going to look towards Mystics team total over. I think that's a smaller play. That's not a best bet or anything, but I think it should be a fun game to watch because this Mystics team, you want to talk about battling adversity. They have done it all season, and to still be in a pretty solid spot going into the playoffs is super impressive.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm actually really glad that you provided that other angle. And even with one of the teams out of it, like again, it's a compelling matchup because we're trying to see where all these dominoes are going to fall. So I'm super excited. I am actually planning on logging these bets in the app today. So, check there to see if I decide to ride with the Mystics or not. Ooh, wait, the line might be dropping a little bit. We might be
to
going
5.5 the other way. Or
No,
up?
I thought it was.
Okay.
But it's not. When it like turns red, like as if it's gonna drop.
Yeah.
False alarm. But I'll be
something to keep an eye on, though. Yeah,
I'll be keeping an eye out, and you'll see my final decision in the Action app. He is Jim Turvey at Turvey Bets on the Action app and on Twitter. Jim, thanks for joining me again.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you to everyone out there for listening to Buckets. Once again, we will be out of town next week for when the playoffs start.
Gallivanting, yes.
Yeah, we'll be gallivanting in Europe. But our buddy Matt Moore is going to hold it down here and get you a playoff preview on Tuesday because Sunday's last day of the regular season. Wednesday, it's on for playoffs. And I will be back the following week after that. A reminder, as always, to download the award-winning Action app. See what I decide for later. Also, if you please rate and review this podcast, and you could win Action swag or a free subscription to Action Pro. Let's get buckets.